It started innocuously enough, as most horrors do. I was browsing Facebook Marketplace late one night, looking for a cheap desk for my new apartment. Among the usual offerings, one listing caught my eye. A vintage roll-top desk in excellent condition, priced at just $50. The photos showed intricate carvings and a glossy finish that hinted at a hidden history. It was perfect. I messaged the seller, a user named Jack, and received a reply almost immediately. Come by tonight to pick it up. 128 Willow Lane, 11 p.m. works for me. The late hour was odd, but I was eager to get the desk. I replied, confirming the time, and set out for Willow Lane, a quiet, older neighborhood on the edge of town. The streets were deserted as I drove, the occasional street lamp casting long shadows that danced eerily in the corners of my vision. I arrived at the address a few minutes before 11. The house was a large, dilapidated Victorian, its once grand facade now draped in shadows and overgrown ivy. The porch light flickered weakly, barely illuminating the front steps. I took a deep breath and walked up to the door, knocking firmly. A few moments later, it creaked open, revealing a man who matched his profile picture, tall, thin, with an unsettlingly wide smile. His eyes seemed to glint in the dim light. "Come in," he said, his voice smooth but with an undercurrent of something I couldn't quite place. "The desk is in the basement." Alarm bells rang in my head, but my desire for the desk overrode my caution. I stepped inside, the door closing behind me with a soft thud. The house smelled of damp wood and something metallic, like old blood. Jack led me through a narrow hallway to a door that opened to a set of creaky wooden stairs descending into darkness. "The light switch is at the bottom," he said, gesturing for me to go first. Hesitantly, I made my way down, each step creaking ominously under my weight. I reached the bottom and fumbled for the light switch, my fingers finally finding it and flicking it on. The basement was a cluttered mess of old furniture and dusty boxes, but in the center stood the desk, just as beautiful as in the photos. I walked over, running my fingers along the smooth wood, marveling at the craftsmanship. "Do you like it?" Jack's voice came from directly behind me, startling me. I hadn't heard him come down the stairs. I turned to see him standing uncomfortably close, his eyes glinting with that same unsettling light. "Yes, it's perfect," I said, trying to hide my unease. "Let's get it upstairs." Jack's smile widened. "Of course, but first, there's something I need to show you." Before I could react, he grabbed my arm with surprising strength and pulled me deeper into the basement, past a row of old bookshelves to a corner shrouded in darkness. He flicked another switch, and a harsh fluorescent light buzzed to life, illuminating a small, grimy room. In the center of the room was an old, blood-stained operating table, surrounded by an array of rusty surgical tools. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized the gravity of the situation. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, trying to pull away, but Jack's grip tightened. "You see," he began, his voice eerily calm, "the desk has a history, a very dark one. It was used by a notorious doctor who performed unspeakable experiments on his patients. Their souls are trapped within the wood, and every new owner, well, they become part of the legacy." I struggled harder, panic setting in. "You're insane." Jack's smile never wavered. "I prefer to think of myself as a caretaker of history." With a sudden burst of adrenaline, I wrenched my arm free and ran for the stairs. I could hear Jack's footsteps close behind as I scrambled up, my heart pounding in my ears. I reached the top and threw the door open, slamming it shut behind me and locking it. I bolted through the house, my only thought to escape. I burst out the front door and into the night, not stopping until I reached my car. I fumbled with the keys, finally getting the door open and starting the engine. I sped away, my mind racing. I didn't stop until I was back in my apartment, every shadow seeming to hold a lurking menace. I blocked Jack and deleted my Facebook account, but the encounter haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped becoming part of that desk's dark legacy. That night I dreamed of the desk, of cold hands reaching out from the wood to drag me back. And when I woke, drenched in sweat, I knew that some things are better left undiscovered. Some treasures come with a price far too high to pay. I've always been a bit of a bargain hunter. So when I stumbled upon a Facebook marketplace listing advertising an antique mirror at an unbelievably low price, I couldn't resist. Little did I know, that simple click of interest would plunge me into a harrowing experience I'd never forget. The mirror was described as a vintage piece with intricate carvings and a mysterious history. The seller, a woman named Evelyn, claimed it had been in her family for generations, each owner experiencing strange occurrences when in its presence. Despite the ominous warning in her description, I was undeterred. The allure of owning such a unique item outweighed any sense of caution. Arranging to meet Evelyn at her secluded countryside home, I found myself navigating winding roads surrounded by dense forest. As I pulled up to her dilapidated house, a shiver ran down my spine. Something about the atmosphere felt off, but I brushed it aside as nerves. Evelyn greeted me warmly, leading me through the cluttered interior to the room where the mirror stood. It was even more magnificent than the photos portrayed, its ornate frame gleaming in the dim light. As I inspected it, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, but I attributed it to the unsettling ambiance of the house. Ignoring my instincts, I handed Evelyn the cash and loaded the mirror into my car. But as I drove away, a sense of unease settled over me like a thick fog. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I could have sworn the reflection was distorted, as if the mirror itself was alive. That night I hung the mirror in my bedroom, eager to admire its beauty. But as I gazed into its depths, I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. Images flickered in the glass, twisted faces contorted in agony, shadows lurking just beyond the frame. I blinked, and they were gone, leaving me trembling in the darkness. Unable to shake the feeling of dread, I attempted to sleep, but rest eluded me. Whispers echoed through the room, faint at first, but growing louder with each passing moment. They spoke of ancient evils and forgotten sins, sending shivers down my spine. Days turned into weeks, and the mirror became a source of obsession. I found myself drawn to it, unable to tear my gaze away despite the terror it invoked. Strange things began happening around the house. Objects moved of their own accord. Whispers followed me wherever I went. I reached out to Evelyn, desperate for answers, but she had vanished without a trace. It was as if she had never existed, leaving me alone to face the malevolent force that had been unleashed. As the days dragged on, my sanity began to fray at the edges. I saw things, shadows lurking in every corner, eyes staring at me from the darkness. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by endless nights filled with terror. But it was the reflection in the mirror that haunted me most of all. Each time I looked into its depths, I saw a twisted version of myself staring back, a version consumed by fear and madness. In a final desperate act, I decided to rid myself of the cursed mirror once and for all. Ignoring the whispers that urged me to keep it, I smashed it to pieces, hoping to break the hold it had over me. But as the glass shattered, a darkness unlike anything I had ever known engulfed me. It consumed me whole, dragging me into its depths until there was nothing left but emptiness. And as I lay there, trapped in the void between worlds, I realized the true horror of the mirror, that it was not a mere object, but a gateway to something far more sinister. And though I had escaped its grasp, I knew that others would not be so lucky. So, if you ever come across a listing for an antique mirror on Facebook Marketplace, heed my warning and steer clear. For within its depths lies a darkness that should never be unleashed upon the world. I've always had a fascination with vintage dolls. There's something about their lifelike eyes and delicate features that draws me in. So when I stumbled upon a listing for a Victorian doll on Facebook Marketplace, I couldn't resist. The doll was exquisite, with porcelain skin and intricate lace clothing. Its eyes seemed to follow me as I scrolled through the photos, and I knew I had to have it. I messaged the seller immediately and arranged to pick it up the next day. As I drove to the address the seller had given me, a sense of excitement bubbled in my chest. But as I pulled up to the house, a chill ran down my spine. The place looked abandoned, with boarded-up windows and overgrown weeds choking the front yard. Ignoring my unease, I knocked on the door. After what felt like an eternity, it creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. The seller, an elderly woman with hollow eyes, greeted me with a crooked smile and led me to the doll. It was even more stunning in person, but something about it unsettled me. Its eyes seemed to gleam with a malevolent intelligence, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me. Despite my reservations, I handed over the cash and left with the doll cradled in my arms. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I chalked it up to nerves and eventually drifted off to sleep. But the feeling persisted in the days that followed. No matter where I went in my apartment, the doll's gaze followed me. I tried to ignore it, to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Then, strange things started happening. Objects would go missing, only to reappear in the most unlikely places. I would hear whispers echoing through the halls late at night, but when I investigated, no one was there. Desperate for answers, I turned to the internet, searching for any information on the doll's origins. What I found chilled me to the bone. The doll was said to be cursed, a vessel for the restless spirits of its previous owners. Terrified, I tried to get rid of the doll, but it refused to leave. No matter how many times I threw it away or locked it in a closet, it would always find its way back to me, its eyes burning with a sinister light. As the days turned into weeks, I could feel the doll's influence growing stronger. I became paranoid, convinced that it was plotting against me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Then, one night, I woke to find the doll standing at the foot of my bed, its eyes glowing in the darkness. Before I could react, it lunged at me, its porcelain hands wrapping around my throat with a strength that defied its small size. I struggled against its grasp, gasping for air as it whispered words of malice into my ear. Just when I thought I couldn't hold on any longer, the doll released me and vanished into the night. Now, as I sit here writing this, I can feel the doll's presence lurking in the shadows, waiting for me to let my guard down. I don't know how much longer I can hold on, but I pray that someone finds this message before it's too late. So, if you ever come across a Victorian doll on Facebook Marketplace, I urge you to think twice before bringing it into your home, for once it sets its sights on you, there's no escaping its grasp.